An ordinary woman walked into an elite shooting range and broke the most advanced ballistic system they'd ever installed. Sounds impossible. Then you haven't met Kate Reynolds. She came in alone. No entourage, no custom gear, no high-tech optics hanging from her rifle case. In fact, she didn't even carry one. Just a printout of her registration and a faded canvas bag and a steady gaze that didn't ask for permission. The first words thrown at her came from Lucas Barnes, the man who built this range like a fortress and treated it like his personal domain. "Step aside." "Lady," he smirked. "This isn't a backyard can shoot." Kate didn't flinch. She simply slid her paperwork forward. 30 minutes later, her shot would cause the range's top-tier system to flash error and force every man in that room to question what they thought they knew. If you've ever been underestimated just for showing up, hit like, subscribe, and stay with me. You need to hear how this ends. Kate didn't speak a word. Not when the room went quiet. Not when Lucas raised an eyebrow like she'd wandered into the wrong locker room. Not even when two younger guys chuckled and one muttered loud enough, "Does she even know which end the bullet comes out?" She just stood there, hands relaxed by her sides. Jacket zipped up to the collar. Her boots plain dusty. Worn, made no sound against the polished floor. But somehow they carried the weight of someone who wasn't new to pressure. What made everyone uncomfortable wasn't that she was out of place. It was that she wasn't. She didn't fidget, didn't look around for approval, just handed over her registration, steady hands, clear eyes. And in that moment, you could almost hear it, not her voice, but their doubt cracking just a little. Because confidence that doesn't ask for attention, it unsettles people. And that's where this story really begins. Lucas glanced down at her form, then back up the way someone reads a menu and wonders if it's a joke. "Advanced Division," he asked, just loud enough. "You sure you didn't tick the wrong box?" He didn't blink when he said it because men like Lucas don't ask questions, they set traps with their tone. But Kate didn't fall in. She didn't correct him. She didn't have to. "I meet the requirements," she said quietly. "I've submitted everything. Paid in full." Lucas didn't respond right away. He just smirked, passed the form back, and said the kind of thing that wasn't technically rude but made everyone in earshot know what he meant. "We take safety seriously here. Don't want anyone getting overwhelmed." It wasn't concern. It was condescension sugar-coated in policy. But Kate simply nodded. Calm. Certain. And something in her stillness made the room shift just a little. Behind the front counter, the tension scattered into muffled laughs and quick glances. A few men turned away pretending to check their gear. A few didn't bother. But one man didn't laugh. At the far end of the lobby just past the coffee station where the creamer always ran out, Thomas Hale looked up. Gray beard scar on his neck that never fully faded. Hands steady as ever, Thomas had seen more sharpshooters than most people knew existed. But what caught his eye wasn't her stance or her face. It was the glint of metal just barely visible beneath her collar, a worn dog tag not polished for show, but scuffed from wear. He leaned back slowly, the way old soldiers do when they see something familiar and unspoken. He didn't say a word. But for the first time that morning, he started paying attention. She took her lane assignment without flinching. Lane 15. The one near the edge where fewer people like to shoot too much sun in the morning. Kate didn't seem to mind. She walked past rows of men adjusting their scopes, rechecking zeros, testing digital wind sensors like they were prepping for war. She had none of that. No custom case, no branded jacket, just a club-issued rifle and a small cloth she used to wipe the sights, not even the fancy lens, just the iron line. Like someone wiping down a memory. And that's when it started. $10. She doesn't hit the target, someone whispered. 20 says she quits after the first shot. The kind of laughter that hides behind volume. The kind that only shows up when someone quiet walks in. But Kate didn't hear them. Or maybe she did and just chose not to answer the way they expected. Kate lowered herself into position at lane 15, slow, precise, like she'd done it 1,000 times. But not like a soldier, like someone who respected the silence before action. Her breathing was steady, left elbow tucked, grip firm but not tight. She blinked once, not out of hesitation, but to clear the noise around her that wasn't really hers to carry. Down the range, 100 yards out, a standard paper target waited. Just black ink on white fiber, but right now to half the men behind her it might as well have been a wall. She didn't rush, didn't overthink. She adjusted for wind, not by device, but by instinct. Then she fired. The room didn't react right away. Only when the monitor blinked, center, direct hit, did someone finally exhale. Not her. One of them. Because silence doesn't always scream. Sometimes it stuns. Beginner's luck, someone muttered. It wasn't even convincing. Not to them. Certainly not to her. But that's the thing about denial, it rarely needs to be true. It just needs to be loud enough to stall what's already coming. Kate didn't react. She reset, slid the next round into place. No applause, no nods, just rhythm like muscle memory from somewhere far removed from this polished range. Behind her, the ones who were betting now looked a little more invested in their coffee. Thomas Hale leaned forward slightly, hands clasped, eyes narrowed, not like he was watching, but like he was remembering something. Because perfect shots don't happen by chance. Not with that posture, not with that breath control, not with that stillness. Kate wasn't trying to prove she belonged. She was just doing what she always had, making the shot count. And that truth was starting to rattle the wrong people. They reset the target. This time, 200 yards with a simulated crosswind added to the program. A level where most new shooters start to second-guess themselves. But Kate didn't blink. She didn't over-adjust. She didn't even check the wind flags like everyone else did. She just moved with the ease of someone who had done this before the world even thought she could. 3 shots, 3 punches through paper, 1 hole, not tight grouping, 1 hole. The silence this time wasn't stunned, it was uncomfortable, like watching someone solve a problem you didn't believe they understood. Behind her, someone dropped their coffee lid. No one laughed. And Thomas Hale. He wasn't watching anymore. He was remembering. Counting. Measuring wind by feel. Years ago, in desert heat. He whispered, barely audible, "That's not luck. That's memory." Applied. Kate didn't turn around. She was already lining up for the next shot. After the third perfect shot, no one spoke. The kind of silence that follows truth, not the loud kind, but the kind that closes throats and furrows brows. Ethan, Lucas's son, leaned over to a friend and whispered, but this time it wasn't a joke. That grouping. There's no way she just trained for this at a range. His friend didn't answer. He was staring too hard. Kate remained in position. Calm. No swagger, no celebration. She checked nothing. Reached for no tech. Just adjusted her elbow slightly the way someone does when they know their own body better than the chair they're sitting in. Behind the glass, Lucas stood with his arms folded tighter now. "All right," he said to no one in particular, trying to reclaim control of the room. "Let's see how she handles a moving target." The air shifted. Not because the challenge had changed, but because everyone in that room had. They weren't watching a woman who wandered in anymore. They were watching someone they couldn't explain. And that unsettled them far more than any missed shot ever could. The third stage was always the divider moving targets, unpredictable intervals, shifting distance between 250 and 400 yards. Even experienced shooters hesitated here. Kate. She took her time, but not in the way nervous people do. It was the kind of time that came from someone who respected what a bullet could do. The first target snapped into motion, jerking sideways with a staggered gait. Not easy, not fair. She fired. 1 clean sound. 1 hole through the red band. Second target popped up mid-glide. She pivoted without lifting her head. Fired again. Third one came faster angled, most people would wait. She didn't. Crack. 3 shots. 3 moving targets. 3 perfect hits. No wasted motion. No hesitation. Thomas exhaled through his nose, the kind of release that only comes when what you suspected finally shows itself. Lucas didn't speak. Not because he didn't want to, but because he couldn't think of anything that would sound believable anymore. And in the back of the room, someone finally said what everyone else was thinking. "Okay, who is she?" Lucas wasn't the type to lose gracefully, and now something about all this felt off to him. He called over one of the range's compliance officers, muttering low enough to keep it casual. "Run her background, full detail. I want every training record, every competition, every cert civilian or not." Within minutes, a few printouts landed on his desk. Redacted. Sections blacked out like someone was hiding a weapon. Or, worse, hiding experience. Lucas frowned. Why would a civilian shooter's records be classified? Ethan, standing beside him, leaned in. "That's military formatting. High level. Not public ops." There was a pause. Not a dramatic one, just the kind that makes men shift their feet. Then Lucas said what he needed to believe, or maybe she's lying. But Hale, still watching from a distance, shook his head almost to himself. Because some files are sealed for security, and some shooters walk with the kind of quiet that doesn't come from YouTube tutorials. No, Kate Reynolds wasn't new. She was just done being found. Until now. The next morning, Kate was called to the front office. Lucas was waiting with two officials from the competition board. They weren't angry. They were procedural. Miss Reynolds, one of them said eyes never quite meeting hers, there may be inconsistencies in your qualification form. She didn't flinch. You listed no formal civilian competition background. But this, he tapped the folder. This level of accuracy suggests advanced military specialization. He waited like he expected her to confess something. But Kate only said, I answered the form truthfully. I've never competed, and my military record is sealed under federal law. That's not my choice. Lucas leaned forward calm, like a banker denying a loan. Still, failure to disclose relevant experience, especially if it offers a competitive edge, could be considered grounds for disqualification. Thomas Hale, who had walked in quietly, now stepped closer. Or it could be considered bias. Unless sealed records are now illegal, nobody answered. Because this wasn't about paperwork, it was about power, and the threat of losing it to someone who didn't bother to ask permission. Lucas didn't back off. He changed his tone. More civil, more rehearsed. During your qualification, our staff noticed some unusual modifications to the rifle you were issued. Kate tilted her head slightly. Modifications. Sight adjustment beyond standard. Stock placement that doesn't align with default settings. Trigger response might have been recalibrated manually. He let the words hang. Kate looked at him, not cold, not angry, just tired of the game. You're accusing me of tampering. Just asking questions. Thomas stepped in again, sharper this time. I was there. She made basic ergonomic adjustments. Nothing outside regulation. Unless you're rewriting those mid-competition. The room stiffened. It wasn't about rules anymore. It was about control. And when a woman like Kate doesn't beg to stay, that scares people who've built their identity around being the gatekeepers. She said nothing else. She didn't need to. Because when someone keeps trying to trip you, and you just keep standing, that says more than any defense ever could. Lucas folded his arms, a voice smooth like a sales pitch. Let's settle this clearly. An exhibition round. 5 shots. Our most advanced digital range. Full telemetry. Let the numbers speak. The room stirred. A quiet, sharp kind of attention. One that comes when someone pretends to offer fairness, but everyone knows it's bait. Kate didn't answer right away. Then, all right, I accept. No blink. No pause, just a simple agreement. Lucas raised an eyebrow as if surprised by her calm. What he didn't know, what almost no one in that room could guess, was that the system he was so proud of, the digital monitoring software. She wrote the core algorithms. She designed the compensation protocols, the ballistic correction matrix, the wind variance sensors, all of it. And now she was being asked to prove herself inside a machine she helped build. Not to win, but to be allowed to stay. She picked up the rifle, walked to the lane, and let the silence fall in behind her like armor. She didn't look at Lucas, but if she had, she might have said, let the numbers speak then. The lights dimmed slightly as the range calibrated. 5 shots, 800 yards, variable wind, AI feedback live on screen. Kate adjusted nothing. No deep breath, no showmanship. Just focus. Shot 1. Crack, hit, dead center. Telemetry readout minimal deviation. A technician blinked twice. Shot 2. Crack. Same result. The system lagged a second longer. A red bar flickered something it wasn't programmed for. Shot 3. Crack. The digital trace stuttered. The cluster was too tight for standard pattern mapping. Someone in the back whispered, Is the system glitching? Or is she really that precise? Thomas Hale leaned in quiet. She's compensating faster than the AI. Lucas swallowed hard, hiding it behind crossed arms. Shot 4. Clean. Seamless. The screen's response delayed. It had never recorded 4 identical ballistic traces. Ever. Shot 5. Kate paused. Not from doubt, from calculation. She adjusted the angle by half a breath and fired. Crack. The screen froze. Then flashed, measurement limit exceeded. Gasps. No applause. Just realization, like watching someone walk through a wall you thought was solid. The screen blinked not from failure, but from not being ready for someone like her. A technician stepped forward, face pale. He tapped furiously on the panel, pulled up the archived calibration data. His voice, when it came, was quiet, but it cut through the silence like a gunshot. Sir, her ballistic profile. It matches the original calibration logs. Pattern density, trigger timing. even the counterwind offsets. Lucas turned slowly. "What are you saying?" The tech looked at Kate, then at Thomas, then back at the screen. "I'm saying, she's not just good. She's the engineer. The algorithm's origin match is over 98%. She wrote the system. You could feel the air shift." No one moved. No one knew what to say. Except Thomas. He finally stepped forward, hand on his heart, half smile on his face. "Captain Kate Reynolds, former lead of Advanced Tactical Systems. She didn't just master the weapon." He looked directly at Lucas. "She mastered the way you measure skill." Kate said nothing. She didn't have to, because now the room had caught up with what she already knew. You could feel it. Not a shift in volume, a shift in weight. The kind that happens when people finally realize they weren't just watching someone special. They were standing in the presence of someone they'd dismissed. Ethan stepped back, hands still in his pockets, but this time not out of swagger, out of discomfort, maybe even shame. One of the younger shooters, the same one who laughed earlier, cleared his throat, then looked down at his boots. Lucas tried to hold the center, but it was slipping from him like sand. Kate stood there, rifle by her side, eyes still calm. She didn't smirk, didn't gloat, didn't speak. That silence. It wasn't empty. It was filled with everything they had said about her. Every assumption, every belittling comment, every bet against her. And now she didn't have to fire another shot, because sometimes the loudest victory is when no one dares question you anymore. That evening, after the range cleared and the noise settled, Kate sat at a small diner just outside town. Across from her was Thomas Hale, the only man in that room who never looked surprised. He stirred his coffee slowly. "You didn't come here to win," he said almost knowingly. Kate nodded, eyes soft. Tired, but not weak. "I saw an ad last month. They were promoting a new training program. Precision through innovation. Same phrasing I used in my old team, when I wrote the core software." She traced the rim of her cup, then added, "They took my work, stripped my name, passed it off as theirs, and built a system that tells people like me, we don't belong." Thomas said nothing, because what do you say to someone who built the standard only to be told she never met it? Kate looked out the window, voice quieter now. "I didn't come back to prove I can shoot. I came back to remind myself I still matter." 2 days later, the range reopened for public viewing. But something had changed. A quiet buzz moved through the facility, not about who shot best, but about who had finally been seen. A girl, maybe 16, hovered near the sign-up table. Her hands trembled as she held a basic registration form. Lucas wasn't at the front desk today. Instead, the girl was greeted by a younger staff member who smiled genuinely. First time, she nodded. From across the lobby, Kate saw her, saw the way the girl stood polite, hesitant, ready to step back at the first raised eyebrow. So Kate crossed the floor. Not with a speech, just a presence. She leaned gently and said, "The lane is yours. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." The girl blinked, then smiled, not because she was no longer afraid, but because she had seen someone who made the fear worth facing. And in that moment, Kate wasn't just a legend. She was a mirror. A quiet revolution, standing with her hands in her pockets, nodding once. As another girl walked toward the range and didn't look back. Lucas stood at the far end of the range watching. He wasn't barking orders, wasn't lecturing on protocol. He was just watching. Watching more women in line than ever before. Watching his son Ethan, not mocking but adjusting scope for a new shooter. Watching instructors quoting Kate's technique notes on the whiteboard. No one had taken Crestview from him, but it no longer looked like his. For years, he'd believed respect came from maintaining order rules' hierarchy image. But today, respect was blooming from something else entirely: recognition. Thomas Hale approached quietly. "Funny, isn't it?" he said, not unkind. "You built a place for marksmen. But today, it finally became a place for shooters." Lucas didn't respond right away. He looked at the range, at Kate, who was laughing a real laugh with a group of young shooters, and for the first time in weeks he exhaled not from tension but from something closer to surrender. Not defeat, just letting go. Of control, of ego, of the belief that strength had to look like him. The email came 2 days later. Short, formal, carefully worded. "We'd be honored if you'd consider joining Crestview's new technical advisory committee. There's no one more qualified to shape what comes next." Kate read it once, then again. She didn't smile, not right away. Instead, she looked out the window of her small apartment past the quiet street toward nothing in particular. The invitation wasn't about ego, it wasn't a reward. It was a crossroads. Thomas called that evening. "You'll say yes," he said gently, "because you don't need them to validate you anymore. But the next generation, they need you." Kate didn't reply. But the next morning she walked into Crestview, not in competition gear but in Jean's clipboard under her arm and a blueprint rolled up in her hand. The range quieted as she passed. Not in fear, not even awe, but readiness. Because now, she wasn't there to fire a shot. She was there to help others take theirs. The new trainee group was small. 5 faces, different ages, different reasons for being there. But one girl stood out. Not because she was loud, she wasn't. She sat in the back, hands in her lap, eyes on the floor. 17, maybe. Sleeves pulled over her palms. The kind of silence Kate recognized instantly. Not shyness. Survival. Kate called for break, then quietly sat beside her. "What's your name?" "Maya," the girl replied, barely audible. Kate smiled. "First time holding a rifle?" Maya nodded. "Everyone says I won't be any good, that I don't belong here." Kate didn't argue. She just said, "They told me the same thing, until I hit a target so clean the system thought it was broken." Maya looked up, finally meeting Kate's eyes. You were that woman Kate didn't confirm. She didn't have to. She just nodded toward the lane. "You don't have to prove anything today. Just stand where they said you couldn't." Maya stood. Her hands still shook. But she didn't sit back down. The first class wasn't about guns. Kate stood in front of the group, hands empty. No rifle, no stats, just a whiteboard. And a question. "Why do you think people underestimate you?" The room was quiet, until one girl said, "Because I don't look like someone who belongs here." Kate nodded. She didn't correct her. She didn't feed them false confidence. Instead, she wrote on the board, "Stand still in the storm." Every time you walk into a space where you're doubted, she said, you're in the storm. Don't run. Don't raise your voice. Don't shrink. Stand. Still. And show them they were wrong. She didn't teach trigger pressure yet, or wind correction. She taught eye contact, breath control, grounding the feet. Because the first target they had to master was their own fear. And by the end of that hour, even Maya, still unsure, still shaking, was standing taller. Not steady, not yet, but planted. Kate found Lucas by the archive room. He was organizing old logbooks, hands slower than before, movements careful, almost reverent. He didn't look up when she stepped in. "Never thought I'd see this place full of girls laughing and breaking records," he said, half smiling. Kate leaned against the doorframe. "Neither did I, but maybe that's because no one ever gave us the space to imagine it." Lucas nodded, then paused. "I was wrong about you," he said. "Not just about your skill, about your reason for being here." Kate didn't rush to forgive, but she didn't hold bitterness either. "I didn't come here to take anything from you, Lucas. Just wanted to take back what was mine." He handed her an old manual, her original algorithm printed and annotated with faded ink. "Funny thing," he said, "your code still holds up better than most of our egos." They both laughed, soft and short. 2 people, 2 eras, and, for the first time, no pride. Just peace. The hall was quiet, not silent, just waiting. The banners read Crestview Youth and Women's Precision Training Center, and above the entrance, in clean, understated lettering, in honor of Kate Ellison, for those who were told to step aside. Kate stood behind the mic, eyes scanning the room. Parents, students, a few skeptical faces, a few tearful ones, and Maya sitting front row, spine straight. She didn't open with a joke or a speech about overcoming odds. Instead, she said, "You're not here to prove anything to anyone, not even to me. You're here because there's a part of you quiet, maybe scared, that still showed up anyway." She let that sit. "That part, that's the part I trust most." The applause didn't erupt. It rose slowly, like the people in the room weren't just clapping, they were exhaling. Because someone finally said out loud what they'd been carrying for years. First session. Kate stood at the front of the new training hall, clipboard in hand, eyes sweeping across the eager faces. But something felt off. The targets had been reprogrammed incorrectly. One of the automated arms swung too wide, throwing off the aim. A few students grew frustrated. "We'll pause," Kate said calmly. "Let me fix the setting." But before she reached the console, Maya stepped forward. "I think I know what's wrong." Kate hesitated. She could have insisted. She'd designed this system after all, but instead she stepped aside. Maya knelt, typed a short sequence, adjusted calibration. The targets reset this time, smooth and accurate. The students clapped. Kate looked at her, not just impressed, but moved. "Nice work," she said quietly. "You ever think about leading a class someday?" Maya looked stunned, but then smiled. "Only if I can borrow your clipboard." Kate laughed, and in that moment she didn't feel replaced. She felt relieved, because the best thing she'd ever built was finally standing on its own. The classroom was empty now. Sunlight stretched across the floor, warm and slow. Kate sat alone in the back row. No clipboard, no boots thudding across the tile, just her and the quiet. For years, every silence had felt like pressure. Prove, defend, outperform, endure. But this was different. She watched through the window as Maya explained sight alignment to two younger girls outside. Calm, patient, unafraid of getting it wrong. Kate smiled, not with pride, but with peace. A soft voice interrupted. "Coffee." It was Thomas, 2 mugs in hand. Kate took one, still watching the field. "She fixed the calibration faster than I ever did. That's how you know you taught, right?" Thomas said. "When they stop needing you, and you're okay with it." She didn't reply, just sipped and let the silence be what it was earned. Kate heard the footsteps before she saw him. Steady, hesitant, familiar. She turned, and there he was. Ben. Civilian jacket, grayer hair, but same eyes. The man who once waited for her to come home from deployment, and eventually stopped waiting. He stood at the doorway, unsure. "Thomas told me you were back?" Kate nodded. No smile, but no armor either. "You look well," he said. "You look—" "The same," she replied, then softer. "But I know that's not true." A long pause. "Then I left," Ben said, "because you never let me in. You let the war in, the proving, the silence. But not me." Kate didn't deny it. "I wasn't ready, then," she said. "Not for softness, not even for kindness. Are you now?" She didn't answer right away, just gestured to the empty seat beside her. He sat down. No dramatic music, no big apology, just 2 people. Finally breathing in the same space again. The range was empty that morning. No judges, no scoreboard, no competition, just Kate and 1 bullet. She stood at lane 15, the same one Lucas had once waved her toward with condescension. Now her steps were calm, measured. No one watched. No one needed to. Thomas had placed a target 1,000 yards out, not to test her, but to give her a goodbye. Kate loaded the chamber, breathed in, and whispered to herself, "This one's for her. Not for Emily Carter, not even for the soldier she once was, but for the girl before all of it, the one no one believed in." She pulled the trigger. The shot cracked through the stillness. Dead center, but this time no one applauded, and it was perfect. She set the rifle down. Ben waited nearby. Maya waved from the fence. Thomas tipped his hat. Kate didn't linger. She just walked away, not from the range, but from the need to stay on it. Months later. The center's walls are covered in photos now. Students' smiling groups celebrating targets pierced clean through, but in a small frame near the door there's a different picture. Black and white. Kate not in uniform, just sitting beside a younger girl, both holding rifles across their laps, not aiming, just sharing. No caption, just a quote under it. "Sometimes you don't need to be the one pulling the trigger, to be the reason someone else dares to." Maya walks past it every morning, and every morning she touches the frame lightly, like a habit, like a thank you. Kate doesn't come in every day now. Sometimes she's seen hiking or reading under the bleachers. Once she was spotted teaching a group of veterans how to code. But her presence, still here, in how students breathe before a shot, in how they steady their shoulders not for accuracy, but for trust. And maybe that's what legacy really is. Not what you leave behind, but who you leave standing. Thank you for staying until the end of Kate's story. If it moved something in you, if you've ever felt underestimated, unseen, or quietly resilient, you're not alone. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to follow more real human stories like this. Because sometimes, the quietest voices leave the deepest echo.